The air crackled with tension as Naruto Uzumaki found himself standing on a metallic platform suspended high above an abyss, the cold wind whipping through his orange jumpsuit. His blue eyes darted around, taking in the bizarre arena, a sprawling labyrinth of floating platforms, neon-lit traps, and towering screens displaying a grinning, masked host. "What the hell is this place?" he muttered, clenching his fists. The last thing he remembered was training with Sasuke in the Hidden Leaf Village before a blinding light swallowed him whole. Now, he was here, trapped in a game he didn't sign up for. A booming voice echoed through the arena, dripping with mock cheer. "Welcome, contestants. You've been chosen for the ultimate test of strength, wit, and survival." The masked figure on the screen gestured grandly, his porcelain smile never wavering. "Only one of you will leave alive. The rest? Well, let's just say the audience loves a good show." Naruto's stomach churned. This wasn't just a game, it was a death trap. Across the platform, a figure emerged from the shadows, a lean, silver-haired ninja with a jagged scar running down his cheek. His crimson eyes locked onto Naruto, and a smirk twisted his lips. "Looks like I drew the short straw," the stranger taunted, cracking his knuckles. "The famous Konoha ninja, huh? Let's see if you're as strong as they say." Naruto gritted his teeth. He didn't know this guy, but he recognized the killing intent radiating off him. "I don't want to fight you, but if you're gonna come at me, I won't hold back." He shot back, channeling chakra into his limbs. The platform beneath him trembled as the first move was made. The enemy ninja lunged, his hands a blur as he unleashed a flurry of kunai. Naruto twisted midair, deflecting the blades with his own, the metallic clangs ringing through the arena. The stranger didn't let up. With a swift hand sign, he exhaled a torrent of flames, a fire release technique that roared toward Naruto like a hungry beast. Naruto reacted instantly, forming the ram sign. Wind release, gale palm. A powerful gust erupted from his palms, slicing through the fire and dispersing it into embers. The force of the counterattack sent the enemy skidding backward, his eyes widening in surprise. Naruto seized the opening. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen copies of himself materialized in a puff of smoke, surrounding the silver-haired ninja. The clones attacked in unison, fists and feet flying, but the enemy was faster. With a spinning kick, he shattered 3 clones in one move, then weaved through the rest, his movements fluid and precise. The stranger's grin returned. "Not bad, but you'll have to do better than that." His hands flashed through another sequence of signs, and the ground beneath Naruto's feet erupted in a geyser of water. Naruto barely dodged, flipping backward as the liquid coiled like a serpent, aiming to ensnare him. "Water release, serpent's bind," the enemy declared, the watery tendrils lashing out. Naruto's mind raced. This guy was no pushover, his jutsu were advanced, his reflexes sharp. But Naruto had faced worse. With a determined yell, he slammed his palms together. Rasengan. A swirling sphere of chakra formed in his hand, its energy humming violently. He charged forward, weaving through the water snakes, and drove the Rasengan straight into the enemy's gut. The impact sent the silver-haired ninja flying, crashing into a distant platform with a bone-jarring thud. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, laughter, harsh and unhinged, echoed from the rubble. The enemy staggered to his feet, his body shimmering with an eerie aura. "You're strong, kid," he admitted, wiping blood from his lip. "But I'm just getting started." His muscles bulged, veins pulsating as his chakra surged. The air around him distorted, and in an instant, his form twisted, his skin darkened, his nails elongated into claws. A bestial snarl ripped from his throat. Naruto's breath hitched. A transformation jutsu? No, this was something darker. The enemy's eyes glowed crimson, his power multiplying exponentially. "Let's see how you handle this," he roared, vanishing in a blur. Naruto barely had time to react before a clawed hand slashed across his chest, sending him sprawling. Blood seeped through his torn jumpsuit as he rolled to his feet, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a fight anymore, it was a battle for survival. The masked host's laughter echoed in his ears, a reminder of the twisted game he was trapped in. Gritting his teeth, Naruto reached deep within himself, calling upon the power he had sworn to master. "If it's a monster you want," he growled, his pupils morphing into slits, "then I'll give you one." Orange chakra flared around him, his whisker marks deepening as the Nine Tails energy surged through his veins. The arena trembled as two forces of nature collided, their clash sending shockwaves through the deadly game show. Naruto didn't know how he got here, but one thing was certain, he wasn't leaving without a fight. The arena's blinding lights bore down on Naruto as he wiped blood from his lip, his breath ragged. Around him, the twisted game show's audience roared, their cheers a cacophony of hunger for violence. His opponent, a hulking figure clad in jagged armor, lunged forward with a fist wreathed in crackling energy. Naruto barely dodged, the shockwave from the mist strike tearing up the ground behind him. TCH, not bad for a dead man walking, the brute sneered, flexing his gauntleted fingers. Naruto gritted his teeth, feeling the Kyuubi's chakra simmer beneath his skin, begging to be unleashed. Across the battlefield, Sasuke's Sharingan spun wildly as he parried a flurry of kunai from a lithe, masked assailant. Each blade was laced with poison, their edges glinting under the artificial sun. Predictable, Sasuke muttered before vanishing in a blur, reappearing behind his foe with Chidori screeching in his palm. But the attacker twisted midair, their body contorting unnaturally to avoid the lethal strike. "You'll have to do better than that, Uchiha," they taunted, landing lightly before darting in again. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, this wasn't just speed. Their movements were being manipulated, like puppets on strings. He needed to find the source. Meanwhile, Sakura's fist smashed through a barricade of earth, sending debris flying toward her opponent, a wiry woman with a sadistic grin. "Cute," the woman chuckled before weaving hand signs. The ground beneath Sakura liquefied, swallowing her up to the waist. Panic flashed in Sakura's eyes, but only for a second. With a roar, she channeled chakra into her arms and shattered the trap, leaping free as the woman's eyes widened. "You're stronger than you look," the woman admitted, cracking her knuckles. "But let's see how you handle this." She slammed her palms together, and the air itself seemed to warp, distorting Sakura's vision. Illusions? No, the very space was bending. Sakura clenched her fists. If she couldn't trust her eyes, she'd rely on instinct. Back with Naruto, the armored brute charged again, this time with a technique that sent shockwaves rippling through the arena. Naruto crossed his arms, taking the brunt of the impact before skidding backward, his shoes scraping against the blood-stained floor. "You're tough, I'll give you that," Naruto spat, grinning through the pain. "But I've faced worse." With a burst of speed, he formed a Rasengan, its spiraling energy humming violently. The brute smirked, raising his arms to block, but Naruto feinted at the last second, twisting mid-stride to slam the attack into his opponent's side. The explosion of force sent the armored man crashing through a pillar, dust billowing in his wake. Sasuke, now realizing his enemy's movements were being controlled by nearly invisible chakra threads, acted fast. He ignited his Susanoo, the skeletal form erupting around him as he severed the strings with a sweep of his ethereal blade. The masked assailant staggered, their control broken. "Now," Sasuke growled, launching forward with Amaterasu flames licking at his fingertips. The attacker barely had time to scream before the black fire consumed them. Sakura, meanwhile, had closed her eyes, focusing on the vibrations in the air. When the space-warping woman struck, Sakura sensed the distortion, and countered with a devastating uppercut. The impact sent her opponent flying, blood arcing through the air. "You can't trick someone who doesn't need to see," Sakura panted, wiping sweat from her brow. But the battle wasn't over. The arena trembled as the armored brute emerged from the rubble, his armor now fractured but his aura more menacing than ever. "You'll have to kill me to win, brat," he snarled, his body surging with dark energy. Naruto felt the Kyuubi's voice in his mind, he's tapping into forbidden power. "And this now?" Naruto nodded, his pupils slitting as orange chakra cloaked him fully. "Then I'll finish it," he roared, forming a massive Rasen Shuriken. The brute charged, his own energy coalescing into a monstrous fist of pure destruction. The two attacks collided, the shockwave ripping through the arena, sending cracked spider webbing across the ground. For a moment, it seemed the very world would tear apart, until, with a final, deafening explosion, the brute was sent crashing through the far wall, unconscious. Naruto dropped to one knee, exhausted but victorious. Sasuke and Sakura regrouped beside him, their own battles won but their bodies pushed to the limit. The audience's cheers grew frenzied, their bloodlust insatiable. Then, the screens flickered to life, revealing the smirking face of the game show's host. "Congratulations, contestants. But the final round is about to begin." The ground beneath them split open, and from the depths emerged a monstrous figure, a fusion of their worst nightmares, its eyes glowing with malice. Naruto swallowed hard, his fists tightening. This wasn't just another fight. This was the climax. And they had no choice but to push past their limits one last time. The arena trembled as Naruto and his opponents circled each other, sweat mingling with blood in the dirt beneath their feet. The game show's twisted host cackled from above, his voice booming through the speakers, "Only one will leave alive. Fight for your fate." The air crackled with tension, every breath heavy with exhaustion and resolve. Naruto's muscles screamed, his chakra reserves nearly depleted, but his eyes burned with defiance. Across from him, the masked warrior, his final opponent, shifted into a battle stance, their blade glinting under the harsh artificial lights. Naruto's mind raced. He couldn't lose, not when so much was at stake. The lives of his friends, the fate of his world, all hinged on this moment. With a roar, he surged forward, kunai flashing, but the masked warrior parried with inhuman speed, countering with a vicious kick that sent Naruto skidding back. Pain flared through his ribs, but he gritted his teeth. He had to dig deeper. Memories flashed, Sasuke's smirk, Sakura's tears, Kurama's growl in his mind. They were counting on him. The masked warrior lunged again, their blade aimed for his heart. At the last second, Naruto twisted, feeling the steel graze his side. Blood dripped, but he didn't falter. Instead, he channeled every ounce of remaining chakra, his hands forming a familiar seal. Rasengan. The spiraling energy erupted in his palm, slamming into his opponent's chest with a deafening explosion. The masked warrior staggered, their mask cracking, revealing a face Naruto never expected, a clone of himself, twisted by the game's dark magic. The realization hit like a hammer. This was a test, a battle against his own darkness. The clone grinned, blood trickling from its lips. You can't win. You're just a failure. Naruto's breath hitched, but then he laughed, raw and unyielding. Maybe I was, but not anymore. With a final surge of strength, he unleashed a massive Rasen Shuriken, the wind screeching as it tore through the clone, obliterating it in a storm of light. Silence fell. The arena's walls began to crumble, the game show's illusion shattering. The host's laughter turned to screams as the system collapsed. Naruto collapsed to his knees, gasping, but victorious. When the dust settled, he found himself back in the real world, his friends rushing to his side. The ordeal had changed everything, the game show's influence had warped reality, and now, the balance of power shifted. Villains who had exploited the system were exposed, alliances reforged. Naruto looked at his hands, scarred but stronger. He'd faced his darkest self and won. As the sun rose, casting long shadows over the recovering village, Naruto smirked. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear, he'd never stop fighting. And this time, he wouldn't be alone.